Hi guys, hope you're well. Mr. Davis here. I just want to go through the mark scheme with you today for the questions that you would have answered on commercialization in sport. So just make sure you've got a purple pen ready and potentially a spare bit of paper just in case you need to make additional notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each question one at a time. I'm going to bug each question, have a look at the marks available, and then we'll scroll down to see what the potential answers were. And as we go through it, you can just pause it where necessary, review any of the content which I haven't talked through, and then just make sure that you've got enough of an understanding that you could potentially answer that question to get full marks next time. So question one, explain, try that again. Explain 2 benefits of sponsorship, investing large amounts of money in sport. So 2 benefits, and it's 4 marks. Okay, so that basically means that when I'm explaining it, I've got to make 2 points, but I've got to explain them to make sure. So it's not a case of 4 separate points. I've got to make sure that I'm making 2 points and I'm explaining them. So 2 benefits of sponsorship to companies, so it's to the companies. Got to remember that. Invest in large amounts of money in sport. So let's take a look. So for each one, you're going to get a mark for making the simple AO1 point, and you're going to get a mark for making the AO2 point, so the explanation of it. So if you have a little look, things like increase in publicity or media coverage results in an increased sale. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a pretty straightforward one. So for the company, that basically sums up what they're doing in terms of sponsorship. They're trying to publicize themselves, put themselves in the media spotlight, and as a result, they're going to try and get increased revenue or through sales. So they're going to make more money through the sales. So can you see how that's 2 separate points there? If you just say that they're going to make more money, you're only getting 1. If you just say that they're going to be in more of the media spotlight, then you're only going to get 1. But by combining them together, you've explained the point. You've explained why they're going to get more sales. So that's how to get 2 marks. Let's look for the next one. So linking the company to an elite athlete. So that makes sense, yeah. So that's what they want to do. So something like Puma to Raheem Sterling, and then that adds value to the brand. So you're saying what the impact of it is. It creates an association with excellence. It creates an association with a healthy image. You don't have to have all of them, but one of those. So value to the brand, an association with excellence. Yeah, that makes sense. An association with healthy image. So I'm thinking maybe the association with excellence, but it's up to you. Linking the company to the elite athlete creates an association with excellence. That's probably one that I'm looking to do to make sure that I get the marks there. It's fairly straightforward. I'm not going to read through all the others, but as you can see, each one was something that we covered in the presentation. So 1 to do with tax relief, 1 to do with the morale of the company, and then there's an additional one to do with the company being provided with tickets, which helps build relationships. So I'm probably not going to remember that one, but I would say any one of the others, I would go with the first 2 to make sure that's how I'm going to get 4 marks. So just pause the video, just make sure that you've amended your answer to reflect 2 points being explained, and then just kind of tick off the bit that's going to actually get you the marks in your statements. Okay, second question, discuss impact of commercialization on officials. 4 marks again. Okay, so a discussion. So a discussion means I've got to come at it from kind of opposite angles. Now, in some questions, that means you can go 3 and 1 and 1 and 3. But in this one, I think let's look to go 2 and 2 just to make sure of the marks. So the impact of commercialization on officials. So I've got to try and make 2 positive points and then 2 potential downsides. So let's take a quick look. So 2 positives, there's various different options here. So the first one, increased profile and fame, which increases awareness of the need for officials to support fair play in sport. I'm not sure I'm going to remember that. It doesn't make perfect sense to me, if I'm being honest. So I'm going to have a look at the next one. Increased salary, so they're paid more so they can become professional. That seems like a pretty straightforward one that I'm going to get. Yeah, so more money going to officials that would mean that they don't have to have a separate job. They can become professional. That's definitely one I'm going to remember, and that's a mark there. Second one, increased funding into the sport means more money can be invested into supporting technologies to allow officials to make better, more accurate decisions. Yeah, I can see how that might work. So it's not just going to the individual officials, but there's a central pot for officiating. They're going to get funding. There's going to be investment there. They're a key part of the game. So there's obviously going to be money going into it. And with that money, technology can support the decision-making process. So those are the two that I'm probably going to go with for positives. So let's take a look now at the negatives, because it's a sub-max. You can only get 2 marks for the positive, and the other 2 have to come from the negatives. So my third and fourth bullet point, due to the increased coverage of the sport, there's an increased pressure on officials to make the right decisions. Yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward one. That's a direct sort of impact of the investment and the media involvement in sport, that the officials as well as the players are going to be put under more pressure to make those decisions and get them correct. So that's the third one. Then the criticism of bad performance, it could cost them their job. It could be that their reputation is damaged if there's a wrong decision. So yeah, that's definitely going to be something that I can see myself getting that mark. So criticism of a bad performance, they could lose their job, their reputation might be damaged. So there was an issue at the weekend where one of the more high-profile referees in the Premiership, Mike Dean, he's actually requested not to referee a game the following weekend. He's trying to take himself out of the firing line because there was so much criticism of a decision that he made, and ultimately, he's taken himself away from his job just to try and limit the criticism that's coming his way. But essentially, his reputation is being damaged through the criticism of his performance. So those are the 4 that I'd probably go with, but you can take a look at any of the others. Just pause the video here, read them through, and then just make sure if you're not going to go with the 4 that I've highlighted, then it might be that you've picked another 1 or 2, but just make sure that it's very clear and written correctly. So don't just write it briefly. Make sure it's going to actually pick up the mark. Okay, third question. I think this was the multiple choice one. So we'll just do it up here. Which one of the following definitions best describes sponsorship? Okay, so take a moment to read them through. An athlete's money held by a national governing body until they retire. So that was something we looked at the other day, but that's not to do with sponsorship. That's maybe to do with trust funds. Athletes personally endorse companies' merchandise. No, I'm not sure that that's not sponsorship. So disposable income, that's not sponsorship. So financial support provided to an individual performer or event of a mutual return. Yeah, I'm thinking that's the one. So let's just double check. 3D. And yes, I've got it right. So financial support provided to an athlete, a performer, or even a team or an event. And then there's a mutual kind of transaction that's going on there. So money going one way and kind of the publicity and the advertising going the other way. Right, question 4. Many elite sports are now commercialized and seen as a form of entertainment. So that's just some context. Discuss the suggestion that an increase in the commercialization of a sport has been beneficial for performers and the sport. So performers and the sport. By saying and the sport, it's kind of broadening it out a little bit, but you've got to make sure that you're covering both of those things. And it's 8 marks. So in this question, this is a bit more of a level marked question. Now, we're not going to get into the details too bogged down into structure here, but let's just take a look at the sorts of detail and the comments that you need. So it does require structure. So when you're making these comments, but you'll see how the comments develop. So AO1 statements, simple statements like there's been an increase in wages and increase in exposure to the general public. Okay, that makes sense. But that's not anything groundbreaking. You're not really applying it. You're not going into any great detail. So it might just be that you've made a point that that an increase in commercialization would benefit the performers because there's greater exposure and they're going to get paid more. But then if you look at AO2, if you start to actually apply that, it's just an extension of the previous statement. So an increase in performers' wages, what does that mean? That means that they can train full time, therefore their performance level will improve. You could even extend it further by saying they become role models and can attract more youngsters to the sport. So those are all, that's more in depth and it's more positive. So when you're applying it, you tend to try and make like positive statements. In the evaluation, that's where you then weigh it up a little bit more. So again, it's along the same lines: increased performance wages, they can train full time, their performance level will improve, but, and this is where the evaluation element comes from, but they may want the money too much and therefore prepared to take deviant means to succeed, such as doping. So there's so much financial influence, it may actually have a negative effect. You spelled out that there's some positives there, but you've countered it by saying that there's a potential negative in that there's such a drive for performers to be successful at the top of the game, they may end up going down the wrong route, and this word of deviancy, so just kind of leading yourself down the wrong path and making bad decisions, and that might lead to things like doping, cheating. And the point about the role model, so performers are role models and they can attract youngsters to the sport, increasing participation, good, but that also means they have to portray a positive image as their behavior is always under the spotlight. Poor behavior on the pitch can reduce participation and spectators. So it's this part of the answer is very much focusing on impact. So you've made positive links here. These are simple statements. You've extended it to make more positive links to the sport and what it's actually going to mean. And then here is more about impact, and you've, as well as the positive element of it, you countered it with some negative statements. So that's the whole idea. When you're evaluating it, you're creating a sort of an overall picture. You're not just justifying why it's all good. Now, obviously, this is a question which requires some more depth answers. I would look to maybe make 3 statements or 3 mini paragraphs where they go beyond just these simple statements. You're actually making a simple statement, but then you're adding in slightly more depth. So you're explaining it, saying what that means. And then on this section, towards, I mean, it can be a continuation of what you've written, or it can be as a separate paragraph at the end. But here you're talking about the impact and how you might counter it by saying, yeah, you know, that is a good thing. However, you know, there's a potential downside to it as well. So just reflect on your answers. Pause the video here. It's on these sorts of questions. This is the sort of thing where you've got to take a little bit more time to think through what the comments are that you've already written. How could you expand on them? How could you counter what you've said? If you've made a positive point, how could you just flip that over and say, yeah, however, there's also this that needs to be considered, and it might not all be as rosy as I first mapped out. So that's one just to pause the video on and have another go at it. It might be that you end up rewriting your answer, but it's definitely worth doing that because there's going to be no shortage of these sorts of questions in the exam. Okay, so pause the video there and just crack on with that. Maybe have another go at rewriting it. And once we've done that, we'll go back up here. Right, question 5, explain why an elite performer should consider the nature of sponsorship and their products before accepting a sponsorship deal. So they should consider the nature of a sponsor and their products before accepting a deal. So what have they basically got to think about? Before they accept a sponsorship deal, what should an elite performer think about? Well, if I'm going to put myself in their shoes, I know there's one thing that I'm definitely going to be thinking about. What do kind of top sports people arguably care quite a lot about outside of their game? What are they going to want? let's take a look. So number of different points here, 3 bullet points really. How are you going to get the 3? So they need to, let's just think about the one that I'm thinking about here. Take a quick look through them. I'm thinking this one. This is the one that popped into my head. Benefits of one sponsorable brand compared to another. The level of income. How much money are they going to get from it? That's the first thing. Can you imagine Ronaldo sitting down at the table thinking, you know, oh yeah, I've been offered this new deal. First thing he's going to be thinking is, how much? How much am I going to get? Okay, the second thing, I know this is right at the end of it, the second thing I'm probably going to be thinking is, what have I actually then got to do? What are they asking me to do? Yeah, all right, I don't mind wearing their boots, and yeah, it sounds pretty good that they're going to give me, you know, £20 million. But what have I then got to do? What's the expectation? How much control is the sponsor going to have over my life? Am I going to be committed to doing interviews every single day? Am I going to do public appearances and all that sort of thing? So those are 2 obvious things for me. The money side of things, so how much money is this going to bring in? And then what sort of control is the sponsor going to have? Now, because it's 3 marks, I need one more. So just take a moment just to flick through from the top. And I'm thinking maybe this one in terms of something that I need to think about. So does the product that I may be linked with, does that match up to my values as a person and as an athlete? So if I'm an elite athlete, do I really want to be sponsored by McDonald's? Do I really want to be sponsored by, I don't know, Stella Artois? Do I really want to be sponsored by Benson and Hedges? So those are probably products where top athletes, you know, you don't want to be associated with smoking and drinking and junk food because it doesn't fit in with my values as an athlete. So those are the 3 that I'm going to be looking at. So just to recap, benefits of the sponsorship deal, i.e. how much money I'm going to get. The second one being what's going to be the expectations of me in terms of commitment of time and interviews and public appearances and all that sort of thing. So how much control is the sponsor going to have? And the third one is, does the product actually match up to my values? How does it make, what's the reflection on me in terms of this product and me advertising it? You may look at other ones as well. The top one's probably got something in it as a fairly straightforward answer. So me being a role model, you know, I'm thinking maybe that could be a mark that I could get there in terms of something that I need to consider before I then go into a partnership with a product. I'm a very high profile role model. Do I want to be linked in with this product? But that could be one. Take a minute to just flick through them, adjust your answers accordingly. If necessary, rewrite it. I'm thinking 1, 2, 3 as my answer. It doesn't matter which order you get them in. So just pause the video here and make sure you've got that down. Question 6. Sponsors and media pay huge sums of money to be linked with elite performers to cover major sporting events. Yeah, okay. In 2012, the golfer Rory McIlroy signed a 10-year sponsorship contract with the sports company Nike, reportedly worth over 150. Okay, so it's just all context. Golfer Rory McIlroy getting paid loads of money through Nike, a 10-year deal. This is the question. Explain the reasons why companies invest such large money in sport. 3 marks. So again, explaining it. So I know that I've got to make some, give some reasons for my answers here. So why are they investing such large money, such large amounts of money in sport? Your answer's got nothing to do with Rory McIlroy and golf. Okay, you don't have to include that in your answer. It's a general question. What are the reasons for the companies investing such large amounts of money in sport? 3 marks. Let's take a look. So any from here. So just take a moment to scan through it. So it's actually quite similar to one of the previous questions. So let's just do this fairly quickly. that's definitely a mark that I'm getting. Raising awareness of the brand or the publicity that increases sales and revenue coming into the company. That's an obvious one. That's what sponsorship's all about. So I'm definitely going to get that one. This one again was one that we looked at earlier. So linking the sport to good image, the company image, the link to excellence, public relations. Yeah, there's enough there. You don't have to have all of them. I think it's essentially just a good image, and the idea of excellence. That was the key point that came from it, from the earlier answer, the earlier question, I should say. And then you need one of the other ones. So whereas before we could have got away with, it was an explain question, it's where these questions are a little bit awkward, because previously it was 4 marks, you had to explain it. Here it's 3 marks, and you just, what's the actual wording that they used? Was it explain as well? I think it was. So on this one, you're just having to go, but it's only offers you 3 marks here. So you have to come up with a third point. So this is where the knowledge of the other things will be useful. So the idea of corporate hospitality and entertaining guests that might, be investors, they might be working for companies that could bring money into the club or the business. The morale of the people in the office. So, if your company's being linked in with a successful team or a really successful player, that's probably going to make the company and the people within the company feel better. And this idea of the tax relief. So you don't pay taxes on sponsorship. The detail of that is quite complicated, but in essence, it's just a way of them saving money, because money that would normally just get taken for tax, you're actually investing it. So it goes down as an expense and then you don't get taxed on it. So it ends up saving the company money. You don't have to go into the details of it. It's quite an easy one to remember that there's just tax relief on sponsorship. So the company saves money. So any 3 from there, I'll definitely go with the first 2 and then one of the last 3. Okay, so just pause the video there, make sure you've got that nice and clear. Number 7, Sky Broadcasting and BT currently pay 3.2 billion for the media rights to the Barclays Premier League. Outline the disadvantages to a sport of increased media control. 4 marks. Just take a minute to think what that's all about. What are the disadvantages to the sport of the media increasing its influence and control? The disadvantages to the sport. Media is good for the sport. If you think about the Golden Triangle, it's intrinsically linked into the success of sport. I now have to outline 4 disadvantages. Let's take a quick look. Okay, so any from the following. Take a minute just to pause it here and have a quick scan through. And let's see which ones we think are the most straightforward. So the disadvantages. So there's definitely something, I understand this one. The traditional nature of the sport changes. So, traditionalists don't like the fact that badminton now has a different way of being played. Cricket now has a different way of being played. Even football is different now from how it once was. It's like if you hear the pundits always talking about, it's a different game now. You can't do that. That wouldn't have been a foul in my day. That's the sort of thing that the traditions of the game are being lost to a certain extent through the media's involvement, because the media's obsession with making it, exciting and high-paced, and sometimes that's just not how games are played out. So I understand that one. The traditional nature of the game is changing. I also get that maybe, you could also have something about the scoring systems being changed. So that was, badminton with the idea that you can only score on your own serve, tennis bringing in tie breaks, lots of things like that. A 2020 is not a scoring system, but essentially it's an adaptation to the game. What else have we got here? So playing times, that's a key one and probably a straightforward one. So kickoff times and playoff time, playing times change based on the media. So there's a much fewer Saturday 3 o'clock games now, scattered over Sunday, Monday night football, even like late on Saturday. it's not ideal for fans and traditionalists, and just the basic nature of the sport. It can be seen as a negative, the fact that those times have changed, and the kickoff times have changed, and it's largely dictated by the media which games they want on telly, and trying to get that prime slot on the telly. Probably the same thing for this one. The location of the events might be influenced. So, it would make sense if Manchester United and Manchester City, or let's say Newcastle, are playing in the FA Cup final. What's the point of having it at Wembley? Why would they have it at Wembley when all of those fans and the clubs have to come all the way down south, struggle on the trains and stuff? There's no real benefit to the clubs of having it at Wembley. They've got massive stadiums up north. They could have them up there, but slightly bigger, and it's just the showpiece event at Wembley. So that's why they have it there. But essentially, that's an influence of the media. There are other things that you can have. Just take a moment. Where are we getting our 4th mark? Wow. There's definitely something here about the time, the coverage that different sports get. So minority sports are, negatively affected by the fact, yeah, it's great that the media are involved in sport, but to a large extent, they're involved in football. Don't see so many of the other sports on regularly. If you're a netball fan, are you going to go and buy Sky Sports just to watch a few netball games? Probably not, because there's so much football on. So that's definitely one. Now, I don't need any others, but let's just take a quick look through them. This idea of sensationalizing negative events. So it just promotes, you could argue football's not that bad, but they make such a big deal about diving and cheating and that sort of thing. It's the media that drum it up because it makes it, it makes stories, it sells papers. I won't go through all the others, but you can read them through. And if you've got any of the others down, obviously give yourself a mark. But just to summarize, my 4 are going to be losing the traditional nature of the sport and the structure of the games, potentially a comment about the scoring systems changing as well. Second one being about the playing times being altered. The third one being about the location of the events. So key events like FA Cup finals and things being played in stadiums where it's maybe not appropriate. And then the 4th one, I'm probably going to say this issue of minority sports, and it's not an even spread, and so they're losing out, and it's continuing, that divide is just continuing to grow because those minority sports aren't getting the funding that the other sports are through the media involvement. Right, last couple of questions, I believe. Question 8, discuss the suggestion that the increase in media coverage of elite sport had a positive impact on coaches. So again, discussion. So I know what that means now. I know I need to come at it from opposite angles. The discussion, there's a suggestion, I should say, that increased media coverage of elite sport has a positive effect on coaches. Now, just because it says about positive effect of coaches in the question, because it's a discussion, I'm not just going to get my marks for the positive effects. So let's see what it says. So these are things you can say in agreement. So I need 2 of these. So greater profile and job awareness of their role. Yeah, I can see that's pretty straightforward, in the same way as players and to a certain extent officials, managers now, managers now have that huge profile. So it's often talked about, as well as the players, Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, big time managers, Steve Bruce at Newcastle, maybe to a lesser extent, but it's the profile that they bring. Tuchel's just come in at Chelsea, big names in the game, in the managerial coaching world, and with that profile, that's a positive thing. They're the ones in magazines as well. They're the ones that get interviewed. They're the ones on the back pages about what they've said in their interview after the game. So it's a greater profile and public awareness of their role, which, ultimately is a positive. With that, huge salaries that they earn, those managers will be probably on a similar level of pay, if not more, to the majority of their players. they will get paid a huge amount of money, and it's because of the media's involvement in sport. So those are probably the two straightforward ones. Now, just take a look here. It says not just more money, you need to see how it can be used. So this one is linked into this third point about the funding. So I'm probably going to avoid that because I'm happy with these 2 points here. Increased profile of the individual coaches and their kind of public profile. And then from that, increased salary and better job opportunities are going to become available, definitely. So without the media's involvement, someone like, these guys who are coming up like Klopp and Tuchel, they wouldn't get those jobs. They wouldn't have gone to PSG and then come to the Chelsea job if the media hadn't kind of got involved in their promotion as a coach. So those are two fairly straightforward ones. Worth, just before we look at the disagree, worth just looking at these other ones as well. So it's easier to analyze opposition. Yeah, I can see that because there's so much media profile on all the different clubs and players, you probably can just pull information off the internet or watch a film of the last time they played, and then from that they can also learn from other coaches as well. So you hear a lot about that. Excuse me, of coaches like, I'm trying to understand how does Pep Guardiola do it. You could probably get hold of some of his coaching sessions on the internet, and that's all through the media. I'm not saying go with those ones, but it's useful to think about it just in case you get a bigger question on it. But I'm definitely still thinking increased profile plus increased salary. Then I need to disagree ones. So greater pressure, that's definitely one I'm going to go with. That's fairly straightforward. The media involvement is definitely going to increase the pressure and the expectation that they need to be successful. If they don't, they're going to lose the job, just like Frank Lampard did. He wasn't doing such a bad job. As soon as he loses a few games, media like hyperbole kicks in. Oh, Frank Lampard hasn't got the experience. He gets sacked. When in fact he was probably actually doing last year he did a great job, and now suddenly a few results go against him. Media gets involved saying, oh yeah, who's free in the market that they could get? Yeah, let's get Lampard out, and it influences the decisions that are made. Let's have a quick look. Well, that's kind of linked in with the hire and fire culture, so you could have that as a separate point. Yeah, that's a fairly straightforward one as well. I think the second one, so I'll go for the top two there and the top two here as well. So on this last one, greater expectation to deal with the media. So those managers, like I said, having to do all their interviews before the game, after the game, sometimes even at half time, you see them getting asked questions before they then go out. That's not what they want to be doing. They want to be working with their team, being focused, but they have to do all these interviews. And that's to a certain extent an invasion of privacy. You get some stuck-up guy pushing a microphone in your face, asking all these questions about how well you're doing a job. And, it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy. Plus, that the media could just be spotlighting that manager, then photos of them in the car, them going home, all that sort of thing. Just the same as with players. Yeah, the pressure and the lack of privacy and the expectation to do well is huge. So that's where I'm getting my 4, just to clarify. Increased profile and public awareness, positive. Increased salary and job opportunities, positive. But increased pressure and focus on just winning, that's a negative. And the expectation that you should always be available to the media, and if you don't, if you walk out of a press conference, if you don't do the press conference, then suddenly that creates even more of a problem. So that's how to get the 4 marks there. Pause the video just to make sure you've got all of those down. And then the last question. Sponsorship and commercialization are an integral part of sport. Discuss again the suggestion that sponsorship, commercialization have improved the nature of sport and experience for the spectator. 7 marks. Okay, so this one, we've had some performers, we've had about coaches, we've had about officials. Now this one, and we've looked at just the sport in general. This one is specifically to do with the experience of the spectators. Discuss. Has it improved? Has the sponsorship and commercialization improved that? Let's take a quick look. So lots of options here. Submax of 4 marks. So it means You can either have 4 agree or 4 disagree, and then the other 3 marks have to come from the other one. Just take a moment just to scan through which ones are the most straightforward ones that you're thinking of. Well, I'm definitely thinking the first one. Players and teams, they're just better performers. And that's going to improve my experience as a fan. I don't want to watch, a rubbish football match. I want to watch a really good football match with the best players and the best quality of performance. That's going to be much more exciting, much more enjoyable. So the media involvement, the sponsorship to make them professional and train harder, and the facilities that are available to ensure that they can do that, that's going to mean a better quality of performance. So I'm going to enjoy it more. That's one positive. Second one, just the money that goes into these clubs now means that the facilities, the stadium, everything about my time at the like the day out at the game is going to be better. So that's a fairly straightforward one. So I'm going to watch a better game, but I'm going to also do it from a really nice, comfy seat with a really good view. I'm going to get a nice, lunch and a drink along with it. So everything about it is improved in terms of my involvement on the day. So that's 2. The number of competitions. So that's definitely going to be a benefit as well. Whereas before it might have been quite limited, for instance, with cricket, there might have just been a few test matches, and then more recently a few one-day games. But now England are playing all of the time around the world, different competitions, different events, different structures of games as well. So it's test matches, one-day matches, 2020 matches, a huge range of competitions and different opportunities to watch. So there's 3 straight away. Let's see what the 4th one is. Funding to provide entertaining experience. Yeah, I get the idea of the education analysis. Let's take a look at the other ones though to see if there's anything more straightforward. Well, there's definitely something about the rule changes because we were looking at that earlier with badminton and 2020. I like this one about the kind of the improvement in technology at the game. So, you get those huge big screens that do the playbacks. If you are watching at home, that's a good one. Because you've already made a comment about the stadium facilities being better, but you could also say that if they're watching it from home, that's better with things like the red button and all the different camera angles and things like that. And that's definitely a benefit. So there's 4 there straight away. And we'll go back over them just at the end. So say let's try and get 3 here. And some of these things we've already said in terms of the generalized impact on sport, but obviously spectators are at the forefront of that. So the traditional nature of the sport has changed. I might not like all the hullabaloo and razzmatazz that goes with the game. I might just want to watch a quiet game of cricket or just enjoy watching my football team without all the media involvement, without all the money, without all the adverts and the sponsorship that goes along with it. So yeah, there's a couple there. You lose the traditional nature of the game, too many breaks for adverts and things like that. Less tickets available, maybe because it's going to hospitality and things like that. So you often hear about, for things like FA Cup finals, teams get allocated maybe 30,000 tickets. Then loads of them the club will just, give to hospitality so that the real fans don't get to enjoy it. This is definitely a good one. Start times are affected, so that might mean that I'm having to go and watch the game. If it kicks off at 12 o'clock and I live up north, I've got to somehow get down south for a 12 o'clock kickoff, whereas it would normally be a 3 o'clock game. You could also say about the kind of the location of it there, that the media has a influence on that, but that's the most straightforward one. Yeah, minority sports get less coverage. That's definitely something there. So I think there's enough there that I think I could get my marks. So let's just clarify where are we getting 7 from. Well, I think it's probably easier to get 4 benefits. So let's just go through it. One of the points, higher standard of performance makes it more exciting. Yeah, definitely one there. Better quality of facilities, so it's more enjoyable and more kind of engaging opportunity there at the event. Lots of different competitions, so lots of different opportunities to watch. That's definitely an easy one. And then I'm probably going to go with maybe one of these, maybe technology. Yeah, technology at home. So that's going to make it more enjoyable and better quality experience for me when I'm not at the game. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 3 more. The traditions of the game are gone. That's a point. Yeah. So the traditional nature of the sport has changed, and with it, the viewing experience. The breaks in play for adverts and things, that's definitely not a good thing. I'm probably going to say something about the start times as my final one. The fact that kickoff times are arranged just so you can get maximum people watching it on the telly rather than actually for the benefit of the people that are at the game. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take your time just to go through that really carefully. Pause it here for the agrees and pause it here for the disagrees. You don't have to have 4 agrees. If you think you're more likely to remember the 4 disagrees, then go for that. But otherwise, that should give you coverage of what you need for that question. Okay, so discussion where you're covering agrees and disagrees, and that's all of the questions done. Make sure it's purple pen marked throughout. If necessary, you should have written, full answers out again rather than just adding odd words in that aren't going to help you when you're revising, and you might get these questions again in a future assessment. But that pretty much wraps up this topic. We'll probably spend the next couple of days just having an overview of everything that we've looked at so far in section C. Okay, guys, hope you found that useful. Send me photos of your work, including the purple pens, and I'd like to see the marks that you've given yourself. Okay, all the best. Take care. Bye-bye.